Welcome to The Starting Point. In today's episode, we ask the question, why aren't there any women on esports teams? We discuss Overwatch team rankings, and we'll talk about PUBG's console launch. I'm Judy.
I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Kyle.
And this is The Starting Point. Now it's time for PvP, where we ask the real questions, like, why aren't there women on esports teams? There are 27 million people who play League a day, for example, but only 10% of our player base is women. Do you think that maybe there aren't enough people? You think the talent pool might be too small? Jimmy, what do you think?
It's a very, very deep issue. I agree with you there. But player base, I'm not entirely positive because, you know, we do see some examples of really outstanding female professional players. Like we have Scarlet from StarCraft 2 and original StarCraft even, and we have Gabrielle.
I think I saw it in the news, like an event where she was doing really well or something.
And she got accused of cheating basically for it. A story about her getting accused of basically being a cheater or a hacker because she was just too good. She was in a tournament.
Because girls aren't good at games, guys.
Yeah. So she was 16 or 17 at the time of the story, and she was in a tournament, and the camera cut to her perspective at one point, first person perspective, and her camera like just robotically shifted too far. And so a lot of people thought, oh, is it aimbotting, is it hacking?
Right.
Okay.
So she got into a lot of heat, and then that caused the discussion of, all right, but are you actually thinking she's a cheater, or is it because she's a girl, or is it because she's a child? What's the real thing here? So there's a lot of debate about it. So to combat this, her team made a publicity match where she would be filmed with like a camera right over her setup, watching her.
Right.
So it's like, you know, we're watching your screen, we're watching your computer, we're watching your hands.
Okay.
We can tell if you're cheating or not.
Right.
The enemy team were so determined, so certain that she was hacking that they bet their careers on it, and they paid for it.
I remember now. That's what I saw.
Yep.
I saw the footage of her. I saw like the back cam footage, and I remember she had a really small desk space. So like she was doing this a lot. She was moving, having to reposition physically in order to get to where she needed to go, which totally explains the erratic movement that you would normally ascribe to a bot. That's like a way that you that's the way that you identify hackers in a lot of first-person shooters, is by seeing snaps to the head in particular, because the robot will like triangulate where an enemy's head is and just like move to it. That's a way that aimbots kind of, because I remember this was kind of when Shore4 was identified, and like there was a lot of contention for him, and so I feel like maybe they were crying wolf a little bit. Everyone was like kind of on edge for hacking.
Yeah.
Right? So they were like, oh, you know, Overwatch is still in its infancy. People are taking advantage.
And hacks.
And she's a girl.
Yeah,
like,
there's no way she could be good.
That would never happen. And so that makes me livid.
And she was thought to be, she was going to be our first professional Overwatch female player. And it was not so. The specifics are a little bit hazy, but it sounds like she kind of just fell out of relevancy, but she fell off the scene.
Like you said, that could have been the first female that we had really rise as meteorically as she would have if she had decided to stick with it, because, you know, her skill was there.
It could very well be that very meteoric rise might even be discouraging to some people, because that's not the only example I've heard of. There was Ramilia in the LCS. She played for a couple of weeks. She was on Team Renegades, and she was known by many as a very, very good support player, very good Thresh player. But when it came to playing on stage, she just caved. It was just a very like anxiety-inducing event for her, and I remember her saying
stage
that.
fright?
Yeah, well, on top of that, she even, I think, got into a deal where the LCS cameras couldn't actually be on her. Like, she refused to, she wouldn't play if that weren't a clause in the contract, effectively. So I can understand that kind of anxiety, but I think another thing that I read about her is that in an interview she said, I don't want to be a feminist icon. I don't want to represent people. I don't want to break this ground. I just want to play League of Legends. We have pro female players in our history of esports. why don't we see any now?
Yeah, what's so discouraging?
What's holding them back?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked about the concept of being discouraged, like being discouraged by having to be take that first step, be that icon, whether you like it or not, just because of the rarity of it all. But do you think the teams themselves are not looking towards female players?
If you're asking if I think it could be nepotism, I think so. The teams are trying to find their players. Well, they found their players, I should say. But when they're looking to make their teams, they're trying to find things that have already worked. How can we bring it onto our team? And they're taking a very safe approach. They are looking at these teams that have already done well, or players that they have seen their matches, their stats in a professional setting, and they're picking them up. And that they're afraid of a risk of something new.
So 10% of the player base in League is female, but I want to say like 40% of the viewer base on Twitch is female.
Yeah.
So that's something that could be monetized as well, that a lot of people aren't taking advantage of.
Right.
You know,
targeting ads towards females.
But then the counter argument.
Right.
Are you going to put a girl on just for the sake of putting a girl on?
See, that's the thing. Then you get these esports teams that we've seen so frequently in the past. They come up. We hear a lot about them in the news. They have these associations, organizations are sponsored by like Coursera, et cetera, and then dissolve.
Rest in peace, Team Siren.
Yeah.
So you're talking specifically about like teams that come out that are all female.
Now I'm thinking about Team Siren, and it's got me thinking like, if you are going to introduce women into the realm of esports, you kind of got to do it right, because Team Siren was super cringy, and it was no fault but the organization that did their marketing.
Oh yeah. Explain for the viewers who just might not know.
Team Siren was supposed to be an all-female League of Legends team that was going to change the face of esports as we knew it. Or so it was presented. But it was done in such a corny way that you couldn't take it seriously. And I'm talking like too many special effects, really poorly scripted interviews, introductions that made no sense, barely any gameplay footage. And if it was, it wasn't even relevant. And it was just really tragic all around. And unfortunately, the members of that team, even though they were pretty decent League of Legends players, just kind of became laughing stocks of the community. And it was very upsetting, because you could tell that they were just kind of meant to be buzzworthy things.
They had the opportunity to take these 5 outstanding players from League. They weren't the best, but they were really good, and they had potential. That's the big thing. And they just blew their opportunity. And it's like, we see this time after time, and Judy, you said it before, you have to do it right. And we were talking about this in the Olympic discussion. You have to do things the right way. There's a correct way to approach esports, marketing, like all of this. But it's so difficult to make these first steps, it seems like, for these big companies. Talent is there. You just have to look for it and actually approach them in a way that makes them think, hey, we're going to be valued for being good competitors in this game. Not valued for being marketing shills. Like, come on.
Honestly, I think even though the video itself was very cringy, the amount of backlash it received was actually also very telling of our community as a whole. You would not believe the amount of vitriol and hatred and disgusting statements that were made about them and about the members of this team. And it's actually not even surprising. Like, the tragedy of it all is that I also think that another major reason why women aren't in esports is because sexism still abounds.
There's a cultural thing in America that video games are for boys. That it's a boys-only club. And so much of video game culture nowadays is trying to combat that. So to bring it back towards how this affects like the esports scene, do you think that there are female players that don't want to get into the pro scene, as that will put them into a spotlight where that toxicity will become like tenfold?
you can already see it with some of the male players. There are a couple of them who shy away from social media for just that very reason, because the amount of hate that they receive from playing poorly will get to them and affect their play. Imagine being female.
Yeah, I remember Cloud9. This I remember distinctly when I used to follow League of Legends back in the day. Meteos, he was performing very poorly that season, and he was receiving a lot of hate for it on Twitter. And so he just had to take a break from social media. And I can only imagine how much more amplified it would be if you were to say Team Siren and you did that badly in a game. Like, their marketing video was bad, and we saw the underbelly of the internet.
We've got all the problems out in the air. We know where, I guess we have ideas on where the problems lie. So what do we do to correct this? What do we do to make esports more representative of our player base?
As time is going on, female representation in gaming is increasing. The marketplace is opening up to allow more women into the scene.
Right.
Another statistic from the survey I was talking about earlier, of the people that they surveyed, 1 in 5 were female, and then the Reddit survey even was 1 in 4 were female. But there was statistics talking about the increase of the player base, and that the female player base is growing at a much faster rate, a much higher percentage than the male player base. We'll get there eventually, which sounds like don't do anything, but it just means that like we are moving.
We're making progress.
Well, yeah, I mean, so like we have been seeing a lot of teams take the approach of all girls. Like you're saying, you've played with girls and guys, so it's like, do you think really that if we were moving forward to continue the expansion in the female player base, do you think it would be necessary, like, to have an all-female league? Because, you know, we're seeing these teams make all-female teams to varying degrees of success.
Yeah, I used to be a staunch proponent against having all-female teams for a variety of reasons, you know, like exactly what we heard now. You know, females already play to the same levels as high-level male players, and sometimes you don't even tell the difference because they don't use gendered usernames. And it's entirely possible to integrate, as long as people aren't being jerks, it's entirely possible to integrate male and females into one cohesive team. And so I thought for a very long time, there's no need. There's no need for women's leagues. There's no need for all-female teams. All that is a publicity stunt, and to take advantage of the rarity of females in esports. I host a series of events where people can come together and watch LCS at locations in New York City. It's pretty fun, and it brings a sizable crowd most of the time. And a reporter from the New York Times actually approached me to cover the story, to cover the event series. It was awesome. But when she sat me down, she was just very excited about the fact that I was a female, that I was a woman running these events. And she asked me a bunch of questions like, you know, how many women come to these? Do they feel welcome? Have you ever experienced a moment where they didn't feel welcome? Do you think that having you as an organizer makes them feel more welcome? What do you think about starting a women's league? What do you think about, you know, having a female team that's from the city? And I just, you know, that almost made me uncomfortable at the time, because I was just thinking, you know, why? I just want women to be in regular esports for the very reasons I noted earlier. So I think that at the time I answered something like, you know, I just try and be there for everybody. I just try and, you know, make it as inclusive a space as I can. But now, you know, as time passes, I realize how important it is to be a part of a group. And now that I'm seeing that games like League and Overwatch are becoming way bigger than we've ever known as nerds, right? Like games used to be the thing that we shared with a couple of close friends in an enclosed location.
I'd be like, guys, don't tell anyone. I have a video game.
Exactly.
I got the SNES.
Right, and then that was like our shared experience that, you know, not everyone understood, and now so many people understand. Millions and millions of people understand. And so now finding something you can relate to has become more important than ever. So now I'm starting to think that maybe, yeah, having female role models, having female teammates, having female competitors, might just give more women the platform to understand that they could go farther in esports than they think maybe now. What do we do to make the atmosphere more accepting to female players?
There was a system that I proposed in, we did a video that was something of a Good Samaritan reward. To reward people for things like, GG, for voting on cards that are not their own, or even on the enemy team, to not write horrible things in the chat, to fill where the team needs to be filled, to stick with a team, find some way of artificially making someone go through the motions of what you do as a good player.
Yeah.
And then they'll
this
realize
is what a good player looks like. This is you.
Well, you laugh, but I mean it though.
No,
because
I think incentivizing good behavior is really, like, now that you've mentioned it and you're explaining that, okay, if you vote other people's cards, it doesn't have to mean anything to you. For the person who's receiving the votes, though, they're like, people love me.
We figured out how to.
We fixed Overwatch.
We fixed esports.
Esports.
In general, fixed it. So step 1, women teams, women leagues. Step 2, positive reinforcement for good behavior in games. But that's kind of a delicate one. I mean, ultimately, this whole thing is going to be a delicate process. But I think if a lot of people who are good, I feel like most people out there are good people, right? So if they just, I have to believe this, guys.
Yeah, for the hope of humanity.
Yes, for the hope of humanity. All of you out there are good people, and you're good and you're decent people when you play. So if you guys continue to be decent people, eventually inclusivity will happen.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think? Do you think that our solutions are good? Do you guys have a better idea? Let us know in the comments. We're definitely reading. It's time for the roundup, where we talk about tournament news and recaps. As a continuation from last week's episode, it looks like esports is being considered for the Olympics. Can you believe it? It's already going to be in the 2022 Asian Games.
They're noticing the amount of viewers who are checking it out.
Yeah.
I mean, no one can argue with the numbers that it is an impressive amount of people watching, which is more than some of the other sports that get a lot more praise and glory. So esports is proving to be popular, which is one of the biggest things that they want.
I feel like one of the most written comments online, too, that I see is like, what are you losers doing watching other people play games? It's like, I don't know, why don't you ask the hundreds of millions of other people watching this with me, pal? Go ahead.
And we now know Jimmy's internet voice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. That being said, though, one really important caveat that we didn't think about is the IOC wants a governing body. The IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee, stated that in order for esports to even be considered a medal sport, it needs to have a governing body that ensures that esports competition complies to the rules and regulations of the Olympics.
Yeah, I'm sure it has to be. I mean, it's like whenever you look into any tournament rules, they have to sometimes cover some of the most basic stuff.
Yeah, I wonder.
You basically have to write a law to say, please don't kill people. You know, you have to say.
Otherwise, they're going to be like, it's not on paper.
Exactly. You have to say, like, you cannot cheat. If you're disqualified, this is what this means. These are the people you have. This is like how long the match will go. There's a lot of basics they have to set down to say it is regulated. We've set the rules, and someone has come in and gone, yeah, no, they're good.
That being said, though, given the structure of tournaments and structure of leagues, et cetera, that we're seeing now, you think that'll be impacted by the rules that the Olympics put in place?
Either way, they need to have a governing body that is, I guess, apart from any one particular game to vet those rules and make sure that they comply. Almost like a mediating body.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll choose like a company like ESL or Code Red or something, or if they'll have like a committee. It'll be interesting to watch, though.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, we'll see if anybody steps up to the plate for that. We're on to Hero Select, where we talk about team changes and roster swaps. I'm going to start with League, because I can.
Fair.
We recently got an announcement for the Golden Guardians.
Great name.
Awesome name.
Fantastic.
I'm really actually happy with this team, because it includes a nice mishmash of experience and new players with some risky picks. We are starting with Lorlo in the top lane, who used to be on Team Liquid. We've got Contracts in the jungle, who was the rookie of the split. last year.
Okay.
A really colossal jungler, still green.
Yeah.
But he's made a lot of improvements over the past year.
Potential too, right?
Absolutely. He's very aggressive, so I like his playstyle. We've got High in the mid lane. Brilliant shot caller. Absolutely. Not even notable as much for his skill, even though it's still up there. He's notable for bringing a team together. And then we've got Deftly as an AD carry. He's brand new. This is his first time, I believe. No, this is his second time on a team. He used to be on the challenger team, E United, and they were colossal. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, I didn't know he was on E United. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's a pretty heavy hitter. He's actually done really well so far in his career, even though it's been short. And lastly, we've got Matt on support, who I think this is his second year.
I have to love the simpler names.
Known for his Lulu and Bard play, so he's got a very esoteric playstyle.
Yeah, Lulu and Bard.
But he was also on Team Liquid. So it's very interesting to see we've got players with some experience, players who are relatively new, and then High to just bring them all together. So I'm really excited to see. Ideally, this is going to be another kind of C9 story where a bunch of unknown players just rise to the top kind of meteorically, and I'm kind of excited for it. I'm not a huge High fan because I value skill over kind of communication as an asset. I still feel like they'll have some growing pains because they've got a lot of gelling to do, and particularly the younger players have a lot to catch up on.
Hopefully, like, we'll get some good storylines too, because I remember, like you mentioned, C9 back in the day, that team of rookies, and then we had TSM too, and we had these North American Titans. Maybe we'll finally be entering the golden era of North American League of Legends.
The Golden Guardian era?
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, right?
I imagine that's what they're hoping for.
I mean, well, if anything, it's nice to see that they're an all-NA team.
Oh, yeah.
They're actually all from North America.
That is awesome.
Unlike, some teams that are, I mean, it's not possible. So it's not possible to make a fully foreign team anymore in League of Legends.
Okay.
There's a cap. You can only have max 2 players that are imports.
Oh, wow.
Unlike Overwatch, where you could just buy a team.
That is true. You can very much so buy a team.
Can't argue there.
I don't want to say I'm against them for buying a team, because go ahead, try finding some good players in NA. Like, all the good ones are signed to Houston Outlaws, Dallas Fuel. We even got some Canadians in the mishmash. Like,
I would argue go into any sport.
Yeah.
And just look at, I don't know, let's pick out like a Canadian team. Specifically, I have a friend who talks to me about hockey.
Oh,
and he talks about a lot of Canadian teams have players from all over.
Okay.
You won't have a team of people just from Canada.
Right.
What does the Yankees do? They just get people from all over.
Yeah.
You can't beat them, buy them.
Exactly. So you just find the best players and you bring them together. Now, that's also not saying that the NYXL, like, next year has to be all the same players.
True.
Every year there is going to be another draft or something they're going to be doing in the next year. Point being, there are people fighting for those spots. I guess this is going to be a Jimmy and I talk of how we feel the teams are matching up right now.
That's actually a good question, because even though preseason doesn't really tell us everything, of course there are going to be teams holding their cards. Like, it's not, everyone's holding punches, right?
Right.
Based on what you've seen so far. Give me your top 5.
I want to say Dynasty is number 1, but I want to place a crazy bet here and say NYXL. Number 1.
Yeah.
I wanna hope and I wanna see it happen.
Yeah, dude.
I'll bet big money on it. We have not seen everyone pull out their cards.
Yeah.
Then Dynasty right beneath it. Soul Dynasty right beneath it.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's be
neck
honest.
And neck.
It
Do you
right.
agree?
It is absolutely neck and neck for me.
Yeah.
NYXL Soul Dynasty. If you watch the games, right?
Yes.
The games were
Oh my gosh.
NYXL was one of the only teams to take a couple maps off of Dynasty, if that tells you anything. Dynasty went up against Shanghai Dragons earlier in the series. Shanghai Dragons there was a lot of lists that were made before the preseason really got started, and Shanghai Dragons was up there because people expect a lot out of the Asian scene. 4-0 to the Seoul Dynasty. Yeah. They got slaughtered. They're at the bottom of everybody's power rankings.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But continue. You got number 1 and 2.
Yes, NYXL. New York Excelsior. I guess I should get used to the full name.
Yeah.
New York Excelsior. then the Seoul Dynasty, followed by London Spitfire came in strong. The only European team, and we had some upsets. They got their butts handed to them by the LA Gladiators.
Oh yeah, that was quite the upset then.
Which was an upset, because then the next match, the next day, then LA Valiant and LA Gladiators fought against each other. And therefore everyone saw how strong Gladiators was and was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a clean sweep. And then Valiant beats Gladiators. Which then is a weird dynamic of, wait, then what's the placing here?
Right.
So New York, then Dynasty, and then Spitfires. I think beneath that I'm gonna have to put Valiant, because Valiant did beat the Gladiators.
So by transitive property.
And then I'm gonna say, and this is gonna be a controversial one because I think a lot of people don't agree with me here.
Drum roll.
5th, San Francisco Shock.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I was impressed with what they did. On the first day, they had 9 matches, back to back to back.
That's true. Philly Fusion, you could blame them for that one.
Yeah. And they showed a lot of their cards because they had to. They had 9 matches.
Yeah.
They didn't do so well the other days because a lot of their tricks had to be shown. The enemy teams had a lot of time to study them.
Yeah.
And that was rough.
Yeah.
And now San Francisco Shock has shown they have some skill, and they're gonna have time to practice and to study their opponents. And I think we're gonna see some surprise from San Francisco Shock.
But top 5, ready?
Go.
NYXL.
Yeah.
Go.
Classic. Seoul Dynasty, number 2. Number 3, this is gonna be kind of.
All right.
I can't really decide between the London Spitfires and Dallas Fuel for number 3.
Oh, I forgot Dallas.
Yeah, bro. You can't forget Taimu and XQC. Oh, dude.
And Seal.
And sequel. Yeah, like, come on. But number 3rd and 4th, I'll swap Spitfire, Dallas Fuel, and I think number 5 is gonna have to be Valiant for me. Like you said, they did beat the Gladiators, and I'm really digging their color scheme. So
yeah,
it's working out pretty well.
The green actually looks really good.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting it to look as good as it does, but they worked on the spectator mode as well, so lots of good colors in there. Team colors are splashed in.
If you guys had to place a bet on one crazy upset from this season, no prior information, before the season starts, pick your unexpected team to do well.
To do well.
Yes.
Doesn't have to win, just do well.
It has to be an upset, something you did not expect based on your current information you have.
All right, Jimmy, you want to go first?
All right. So, Boston Uprising. Okay, so there was a lot of controversy around that team just because not a lot of the players on there have a lot of Tier 1 experience exactly. That being said, I would love to see an upset from them and maybe against, like, New York XL. Like, I know it's a little weird.
You're hoping Boston beats New York?
Because then New York could just beat them again harder.
How dare you fraternize with the enemy?
Hey man, I want them to win so New York finally has some competition because they're making it look easy at this point.
I mean, you're right.
Yeah, let's go. Kyle, what about you, man?
All right. I know I was singing the praises of San Francisco Shock, but the team I want to see do well in this upcoming season that doesn't really have a rivalry with us, but kind of a very close neighbor, the LA Gladiators.
Okay.
I feel like, especially since there are 2 teams in LA, a lot of people are kind of like, are you a Valiant or a Gladiator? And I'm definitely on the Gladiator side. Jimmy, can you speak more of their roster for me?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Gladiators do have a very formidable roster. We mentioned this briefly before, Surefour, that good old hacker. He's not actually a hacker, guys.
Really? So he never, so that was all just like inflated?
Yeah, hullabaloo. He's just a great player.
He's just good.
There was more merit to that this past weekend, really, with the preseason going on. He pulled out a Bastion, which is that Turk champion that you can play. Yeah. They pulled out double tanks, and they just cheesed through a map to upset the London Spitfire.
But then they went against Valiant, and they lost. So that means there's this thing of like, so they did really well, but then they did really poorly. So what's going to happen is put them really far down on a lot of people's rosters. But I remember when they kicked butt.
Okay.
I'm gonna see. We're gonna see that again. We're gonna see that again.
All right. So you guys are placing your bets. You're placing it on Valiant.
What about you? If as a casual spectator of Overwatch, what would you say?
I honestly, like, I'm ever upward with me. Like, NYXL till I die. Tim's up, super lace tight, ready to go. But Houston, I think, has a really good color scheme.
Yeah. Houston
Their
outlaw.
logo is dope.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh
That's them.
no, they have the best logo. I will
Yeah,
go
with the
that.
two guns. I
Yep.
played a lot of McCree when I first started, and so I really like that. That appeals to me.
We had this big conversation of franchising, right, the past couple of weeks. Going back into League of Legends now, with all these new franchise teams, what are your favorites? What are your prospects on the new coming season?
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because while I'm just going off of first impressions in
Yeah.
Overwatch, I'm kind of going off of nostalgia when it comes to League because my team that I loved and cared for is no longer in the league.
Oh no!
Yeah, Team Dignitas, they never
Oh,
got
yeah.
accepted, and that was the
What?
team that I've supported for a very long time, and they've been relegated and have come back only to not go get selected. So I've made my peace with it. I'm still grieving, but I get to support them in other games, which is great. I right now am looking at. I never thought I'd say this, but Team Liquid is looking very, very prosperous. I used to make fun of them a lot
Really?
for being really bad.
Yeah, they used to be so bad.
They've made some terrible decisions with their seemingly endless amounts of money.
Dude, oh my god.
But it's looking really strong right now.
Mhm.
But I think of the new teams, I'm kind of handing it to 100 Thieves right now.
I remember you ragging on their marketing at first, man.
So I think no. I was ragging on Clutch City Gaming.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
My collar is down. Okay, I'm not collar up, frat broing for Clutch City Gaming right now.
Let's see.
Please spare me. But I actually really like 100 Teams roster. They've got Afromu.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't doing so well last season, but I really like him just overall. He's a great player, and he's got a really good head on his shoulders. He's a really good athlete.
I thought you were going to say head of hair on his shoulder.
I mean, just also have you seen his hair? But they're bringing back Meteos.
Yeah.
And
good old,
I
good
was
old.
never a Cloud9 fan, but I was a Meteos fan.
Mhm.
The way he played was so awesome. He was very aggressive, but very calculated. I'm really happy to see him back. I'm gonna hand it to 100 Thieves for now. That's gonna be my risky bet, but we'll see. So enough of our hot takes. We want to know what you think. Leave a comment down below who you think might be your biggest upset in League of Legends or Overwatch Esports. It's time for our patch notes, where we talk about in-game changes and news. So, tell us more about Winter Wonderland.
Overwatch Winter Wonderland is back. This is the second time it has come around. Last year we had a lot of fun with this one. We weren't sure if Overwatch was going to have a Christmas theme or stick with their World of Warcraft Feast of Winter Veil theme of like, kind of a, could be
Secular
anything.
holiday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they went with Winter Wonderland, which is primarily Christmas, but not entirely. So they brought back the fun thing that was their arcade mode last year, which was May's Snowball Offensive, which is basically, almost feels like Counter-Strike.
Fun.
Yeah. Loosely.
You take like 3 seconds of standing in place to reload your gun, and you get one shot, and it's one shot, one kill, and it gets intense, to say the least.
I hated it when I played it last. I couldn't stand it.
But they also tried to mix things up this year and introduce a new mode, which is called Yeti Hunter, which is basically Evolve. Have you ever played that game?
Yeah.
It's interesting. The Yeti Hunter game mode is interesting. So what you do is there's 5 Mays on one team. It's already the worst sounding game I can imagine, but it's a game mode. 5 Mays on one team, and there's a 5,000 health Winston on the other team.
A single 5,000 health Winston.
He has 5,000 health. Who? Whatever. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, because I played that game mode 8 times in a row trying to get a loot box. How are you supposed to win that thing? Not only does he have 5,000 health,
With skill and precision, Mr. Esports.
clearly,
So-
all the skill Mage
so-
Blaster takes.
Maybe you found this was not the truth, but the Winston is supposed to be doing minimal damage.
What? Minimal?
Minimal damage with his Tesla cannon, but he has to find
with
4 stakes.
Yeah.
And if he can get 4 stakes hidden across the map, then he goes into Raged Winston and he does massive damage. And if the Maze die 5 times, then the Winston wins. And if the Winston gets killed, then the Maze win.
That was my problem. I didn't play with a whole team of 5 Maze, so we just had some 5 random Maze running around trying to wall off of a jumping, ulting 5,000 health monkey. That doesn't work. And then I'm running around like on the meat traps trying to freeze his ass, and I'm like, hello, where's everyone else? Like, what's going on? I literally played 8 times before I was like, no, this is not worth the loot box, man.
That's
like,
too funny.
Oh, I had a blast with it. I can't wait till we have professional Yeti hunters. I think this will be a great addition to the Owl League.
Excelsior, sign him up,
Pick him up
professional.
now.
Oh, you should
Yeti
see me as a
hunter.
Yeti. I destroy. When you get a tank main who knows how to play Winston, and then you give him 5,000 health,
Hell yeah.
done.
That sounds hilarious, actually.
But unfortunately, it will not come to the Overwatch League. But there are also some cool skins, some cool sprays. Limited time events goes till I believe the 3rd of January, or at least very early 2018.
Dude,
Not bad.
Anna has this skin in this patch. She turned into a winter owl.
It looks
Like her
great.
whole visage, like the visor, whatever you want to call it, face mask,
amazing.
turns into an owl. It's beautiful.
Oh
It's
my
pretty
gosh.
great.
Absolutely.
I highly recommend checking out the skins. So we got you maybe back on the Overwatch hype train. Can we get you onto the PUBG hype train?
Well, you're asking a lot now.
Because we have had some patch notes come to PUBG. Jimmy, you want to take it away?
That is indeed true. On the test server, boys, you're gonna be very excited to hear this. Okay, so optimization patches, right? The game does not run like a complete piece of garbage at this point. I can finally get over 100 frames.
Wow.
Yeah, and I have some stuff not on low.
Welcome to 2017.
Yeah, PC gaming, AAA titles. But PUBG optimizations are coming out. They introduce vaulting into the test server, so you don't have to just run into a wall and hope to make it over. You can actually climb.
It's so nice.
So you can climb out of windows. What? It's ridiculous. They added a couple new weapons. The AUG, also known as the Bullpup, that's going to be an assault rifle. That'll be in the game. They're adding some Russian, what's up with Blue Hole and Russians, but whatever. They're adding a Russian light machine gun. It's like disc loaded.
Oh, the DP-28.
I found out the hard way. I was playing on the original map today, and I walked up to a warehouse, and there's this guy sitting inside. It's the first 5 seconds of the game, so I'm like, okay, I have a UMP. He's not doing anything. Let me take a couple shots. He sets up. He goes prone. The bipod. There's a bipod on this thing. It comes out. I'm like, what is that? That's not normal.
And in the time you said that, he sprayed you down.
I have to go look it up afterwards, but lots of good stuff coming, and you guys should be excited.
That's interesting. I've heard from my friends that it's finally playable.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Oh.
I don't believe it.
It's good.
I'm skeptical.
It looks great. It plays really well. It's coming out onto the Xbox soon. It's already on the Xbox preview.
Yeah.
So now the console players can finally play it. And
Or can
boy,
they?
are they disappointed.
Well, okay, so if you're a console player for PUBG, you fall into one of 2 categories, right? You either have an Xbox One X or a Project Scorpio, the new one, or you have the original Xbox One. Yes. A majority of you, I'm assuming, have the normal Xbox One, but I'm sure there's plenty of you with the One X that are super happy with the game because it runs on your iPhone 6S of a console very well. Let's take a quick look at this video, and you'll see the Xbox One dropping to about 6 frames per second.
That's not good.
Texture's not loading. Yeah.
That looked like a Mario Kart 64 level.
Yeah.
It does.
Look at this.
Oh no.
Oh,
Here we go.
There it is. Oh, right through the floor. Goodbye.
Oh.
And he pops right back up.
Oh no. Is he stuck on the floor?
Is he saying?
Oh, he's stuck. Oh no.
This is not a game.
No,
This
it's
is
really
not. A
not.
game.
It's just a look what's happening.
How dare they? How dare they charge any money for what we just saw?
Yeah, that's the bigger question. How are you going to release that to the general public and say, hey guys, play this game, it's great.
And it's coming out soon, right?
It's
So
out.
like,
It's out.
Well, the game preview
official
was out.
release?
The game preview was out last week, right?
Yeah.
So, the real game is coming out in January, isn't it?
Or is it out at the end of December?
That was their release.
That's the what?
That's their release. People were expected that people were surprised that it was a early access game. They were like, wait.
They were expecting it to be a full release game.
Exactly.
But it is early access.
It's game preview.
Right. Yeah, we did mention this a bit last week and how we were disappointed that it was coming out because we actually did research for this and couldn't and found the phrase game preview for the first time on that site. And my heart sank when I saw that. Because you know, see, this is what I hate, right? Awesome concept for a game. Obviously doing it better than any other iteration of Battle Royale games have ever done it before.
Right.
Still managed to mess this up colossally.
Yeah.
I think our own Darian, though, would argue a Fortnite Battle Royale.
Well, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. This has been The Starting Point. I'm Judy.
I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Kyle. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to hit that bell icon to become part of the notification squad because we got so many videos dropping here on the Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.